The following webinar was recorded as part of the original implementation of IWISH and has been made available for informational purposes only. Some portions of the original recording have been cut to ensure participants' privacy. References to the Lewin Group, implementation team, site liaisons, PHL, Google Drive, and some forms are not applicable to the demonstration extension effective October 1st, 2020. Terms and conditions of grantee's cooperative agreement supersede any information presented here. Please see the IWISH Operations Manual for the most up-to-date implementation information.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our training on education outreach for IWISH participants. We're so glad that you have decided to join us today, and we know that this information will be very helpful for you as you continue to prepare to enroll residents. Before we jump into this great material, I want to provide some reminders about, number one, that this is an interactive presentation. We want you to dialogue with us, share your thoughts, your comments, and your questions about what you are hearing. So if you look, there's a chat function in the upper right-hand corner. And so whenever you want to chat a question or a thought about the content, please remember to select all participants. If you have a question about maybe audio or the screen or technical challenge, select all participants. And finally, during this presentation, we also want to hear from you over the phone, so be sure to select the hand function on the right-hand side when you want to raise your hand to speak over the phone. So let's try out our chat function, why don't we? Please enter your name, your role, and the site from which you are listening to. Remember to select all attendees when entering your information. Enter in your name, your role, and your site. Welcome, Shannon. Welcome, Kristen. Hello, Asher. Hi, Patty. Hi, Karita. Hi, Yester. Hi, Faishan. Welcome, Maria. Welcome, Lisa. Welcome, Renee. Welcome, Jewel. Wow, we have a lot of people joining us, and a lot of these names I remember from our training on Tuesday and even from the past couple of weeks when we did our initial training. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, if you are joining us, please type in your name, your role, and your site, especially if you're watching with your colleagues. We want to be able to track who's attending, so make sure that you write down the name or chat in the name, the role, and the site from which you are watching from. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Tiffany and Anna. We're going to go ahead and move forward, but continue to type in your information into the chat box.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah. And so Stephanie, later on in her presentation, if you notice, she has two pictures that she showed with us, a formal one and an informal one. And I bet you're wondering, why does she have two pictures? Well, pay attention during this presentation, and she'll explain to you why she had the double introduction. Today, during our presentation, we have three objectives. Number one, we want to help you to develop methods to introduce the IWISH team in their new capacity to residents. So I know that many of you have residents that have already been asking, why do we have this new staff member? What changes are happening? This presentation today will help you to introduce new resident wellness directors and new wellness nurses that are joining the property. We'll also share with you outreach activities for community building and information gathering. And then finally, we'll provide you with tips and techniques for engaging residents prior to the enrollment launch. I will now turn it over to Stephanie. Stephanie?
Great. Thanks so much, Joy. And hello, everyone. I'm excited to be with you today. I'm really excited about this demonstration and all the information that's been passed on so far. I've been on, I won't say all the trainings because I only did the trainings A and B once. I didn't do them all 3 times, but I'm excited to be with all of you, and it's been really fun to watch all of the questions and your chats that are coming in as you've done all these trainings. It's a fantastic group, and it's been really good to watch. So back during the introduction, I did just want to say hello to all of you. And I'm the Assistant Director of STASH, which is Support and Services at Home, and we're one of the first housing-based service models in the country that started with the Medicare demonstration several years ago in 2011. So we've been doing this for 6 years, and we've learned a lot along the way. And I'm really pleased to be able to be a part of this training team and share what we've learned with you. And like Walter, I will be one of your trainers, and Christy as well, who will see you in Washington, D.C., and we have a great couple days planned for all of you there. So I'm excited to share things with you today and get you rolling. And I am really happy to be following up after Walter's presentation on Tuesday, which was just phenomenal. And I think that what you'll see as the flow of these trainings as we move forward through the next few weeks is that we're mixing in a combination of skills-based trainings along with methods and tools that you can start implementing over the next several weeks up until the in-person training and then beyond, so that you know how to do the model and what to implement, so that we're hoping this is a nice gradual learning process and you can start putting the skills into practice as you start the model demonstration. So this resident engagement training really follows well on the heels of the skills that you learned on Tuesday with Walter. And what I'm hoping that you'll get out of this is ways to really start practicing that and start working with your residents and engaging them. And the things we're going to go over today as far as resident engagement and programming, all of this is covered, or the majority of these topics are covered in the operations manual, which will be coming out to you shortly. Again, we're always a little bit waiting for the government, which is fine. That's very typical. So when you get your operations manual, you can refer to the things covered in here that you would be under the topic areas of program overview, resident engagement, and outreach. And they're very clearly laid out in there if you like to look back at those sort of things. And of course, you'll get the slides and the recording after this webinar. As well, the other thing if you want a short reference is in that same document I've been referring to since the beginning, there is an Exhibit C in that, the implementation activities document, if you want some sample language on IWISH messaging. And that's the first thing we're going to talk about as a group right now, is the IWISH messaging. And, but there is sample language in Exhibit C there. So let's kind of jump into resident engagement. So for resident engagement, one of the things that I think is really important for everyone to understand is it's definitely not a one and done type of thing. You are going to be building relationships, interacting with your residents, and getting to know them in a new and different way all throughout IWISH, the demonstration, and hopefully ongoing for many years to come. And that relationship building and understanding is going to happen forever. So this is the beginning of that. And for some of you, I know there's, I think, a couple of you out there who have been RSCs for 20 plus years or an extended period of time, and that's fantastic. You already have relationships, and I imagine you have wonderful, trusting relationships with a lot of your residents. But that's okay as well, because you maybe can start some new thinking and shifting the way you frame conversations based on some of what you learned on Tuesday, and also bringing in more of a healthcare perspective to the conversations that you have with your residents. But really the foundation of everything you do to maximize the resident participation in this model is to look at those trusting relationships and the understanding of your community and your population, and hopefully in a little bit of a new way if you've been there a long time. So we're going to look at the foundations today, which really starts with those trusting relationships, which is going to lead to the pinnacle of this pyramid, which is maximizing that participation in a positive way. This is our first objective about outreach activities. So describing IWISH. And the reason we wanted to show you those phases of resident engagement at the beginning is we are very sensitive to the fact that some of you are starting brand new positions, some of you are changing the title of your position, and the residents in your building are going to be naturally curious and excited, and they're going to ask you questions. And we don't want to put you in a position where you don't have a lot of, you don't have a lot of information, you feel like you can't talk about what you're doing. And we want to acknowledge that you don't have all the information you need, but you want to be able to talk to them in a really positive way. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about how you have enough information to give your residents an idea of what's to come, and to let them know that there will be more information coming, and they're going to continue to see more and more from you, and so that you'll have an idea of how much you really can say and how to feel good about those conversations without feeling like you have to put them off or constantly say, I don't know. So we're trying to give you a framework of how to talk about IWISH while you know that some of the materials are still coming in and how to kind of work with these delays. So really what we're talking about here is to be ready for those early interactions. I know that some of you may have started last week, and some of you, like I said, started 20 years ago, or even are new and started 6 weeks ago. And we do have some staff that still haven't been hired yet. So depending when you start, just be ready for those interactions, whether you see someone in the hallway, they stop by your office, they're going to want to know, what is your new role? Why did your job title change? Or why is there a nurse in our building? And be ready to answer those questions. And the more you're prepared for those impromptu interactions, the less awkward they're going to be. And they'll feel really natural because you want it to be a nice interaction with the people in your community. And I think any interaction that you have with someone is always an opportunity to learn new things about the community, the site, and the people. And again, I'm going to keep referring back to the tools and the skills that Walter mentioned on Tuesday. Is all of this is an opportunity to practice those new tools in a really easy and light conversation so that later on when you're talking about health behavior change and the topics become a little bit more heated, you've been continuously practicing some of your motivational interviewing skills and your listening skills and all of that. So we're going to talk about for a minute the idea of an elevator speech or an elevator pitch. And the concept around that is to have a prepared presentation that grabs the attention and says a lot in a few words. And now, the presentation I'm talking about here is really if someone says, what is IWISH? That you can answer that question pretty simply and pretty quickly and feel comfortable with it. Now, I think my bullets are out of order because I don't want you to say, if someone says, what is IWISH? And I said, it's okay to say you don't know. I don't actually mean to the question, what is IWISH? So we probably don't want your answer to be, I don't know. That's really more to say, we're gonna prepare an elevator speech so you have a base amount of information, and then when they start pushing on more specific details about the program, then it's perfectly fine to say, I don't know those details yet, but I'm gonna be going to a training in Washington, D.C. in November and find out more, and once I know more, I can't wait to share that with you. So that's what I mean there. I think I should have reordered those. So we're going to talk a little bit about our elevator speech or presentation, and this is not something formal where you have to pull out a note card or sit people down. It's really just feeling comfortable with the way that you're able to describe the program. So to start with, here's the IWISH purpose, and you've seen this slide a few times now over the last few trainings, and it's familiar to you. Now when I look at this, and I'm going to read this to you because let's look at what the official purpose is. It's to implement and evaluate a housing-based, person-centered, supportive services and wellness model designed to facilitate successful aging in community by helping residents to proactively address their health and social needs, maximize their independence, well-being, and quality of life. That's fantastic. That's a great purpose. I believe in it. I have devoted my life to it for the last 6 years, so that's great. And that does not roll off my tongue. If I bumped into one of the residents in our building here in the hallway and they asked me to describe SASH, I would not say that to them because it just doesn't roll off. So I need something that feels much more comfortable to me. This is a great purpose statement for policy, for grants, for all of that. So what we want to work on now is something that feels really good to you. So when I think of an elevator pitch, elevator speech, I want to think about something that feels good. What are my words? What's the language that feels comfortable to me? And I have something here about plain language. You talked about cultural competency, cultural literacy, or health literacy. This doesn't mean dumbing down your language or anything like that. It really just means what is the language that you're comfortable in and that your residents are comfortable in so that it's meaningful. If I'm tripping up over words, it just doesn't feel natural to me. So I want to be comfortable and excited. I think probably all of you are in these positions because this work means something to you and you're excited about it and you want that to come through in what you say. So I purposely did not give an elevator pitch for IWISH here because I kind of don't want to give you the answers. But I gave a synopsis of maybe what I might say if I bumped into a relative at a family reunion. And that if someone asks me what I do. Now I usually want to say I'm a plumber because then I can answer in one word and everyone knows what I'm talking about. Whereas what I actually do is extremely hard to describe. It takes a lot of words, but I might start with saying that I work for a program where I help older adults in affordable housing feel better, manage their own health, and live at home as long as possible. That rolls off my tongue. It feels good. People understand what I'm saying. And then depending who I'm talking to, they can ask more questions. And the conversation can go in any number of directions from there based on their level of interest, their knowledge, and it kind of leaves it open-ended. So that's something I might say, but frankly, I have 10 different elevator pitches depending on my audience and who I'm talking to. So that's a little bit about how you might want to think of that. So what I want to do now is take a couple minutes and give you guys some time to think. And some of you might already have come up with some of these, and some of you may not have at all. There's no right or wrong answer. I want you to think of just kind of a rough first attempt at how you might describe IWISH. If someone stopped you on the street and said, hey, I heard you had a new job. What is your job? Or a resident stopped you in the hallway and you've only been there a week and said, what is this IWISH thing? And we'll just take a minute, think about it, and then this is where you're going to click the raise hand button once we let a minute go by, and Joy's going to remind you where that button is, and we'll see if we have a couple brave souls who might share what their elevator pitch is with us. And this is a no judgment group because we're all new at this, so there's definitely no right or wrong, because the more you practice this, the more comfortable you'll get. So I'm going to give us kind of a minute to think about it, and then raise your hand if you'd like to share some ideas. So really spark all of us when people share. Great. Thank you so much, Joy, and thank you, Judith and Jules. I really appreciate that, and I think it's just really fun. So like you see, just have a go at it, and you're going to refine this. The more you use it, the more you'll change it up, and like I said, it's really fun that to see how people react when you say it and the types of questions that you get. So again, really you want to have something kind of short and sweet, and then as you start to get maybe some more detailed questions, you can say, I don't know, I'm learning too, this is brand new, and they'll be okay with that because it's fun. You're going to say, and I'm going to learn from you, you're going to help in this process. So you can stay positive, and it's fine to say, I don't know, and I see a few, I think you can all see they are chatting in, other people are chatting in ideas, so that's fantastic. So the next part, let me go over, the next part we're going to go on to is resident engagement. So those elevator speeches you're probably going to use all the time, anytime you bump into people and they ask a question. The next part of the engagement that's a little bit more formalized is what we call the meet and greet. And it's really the first time you're going to have some sort of a gathering where you're going to explain IWISH at a high level, and we do want to keep it at a pretty high level still at this point in those phases of resident engagement. And again, you know that your site team will be getting extensive training in November, and that this is what you can tell people. So they'll have that time frame in mind, so they know you're not just putting them off. And then after that training, you're going to hold an official IWISH informational meeting. So that way people, your residents, know that there is kind of some date to look forward to. And until then, this is a time to get to know each other or get to know each other in a new and different way. You get to know the community and talk about strengths and desires and exciting times. So this is what the meet and greet is for. Again, when we're looking at this strong foundation to our model, this is all about these relationships, getting to know people in new ways. So it's still really a part of this. So we're talking about the meet and greet and what this is. I'll talk about logistics in a few minutes. And I think you all are probably pros at logistics and putting on events, so that's why I'm saving that to the end. You're probably thinking, what is a meet and greet? Because really, what are going to be the components of it? Obviously, you're going to say your name and what you do, but let's talk about what that might look like. So I did want to acknowledge that some of you have been here for a long time and you're changing into a new role, whereas others of you are brand new. All the wellness nurses are new to these sites. So no matter what, you're going to have a new person on your team. And then some of you are going to have a whole new team, and it's going to be brand new to have someone in this resident wellness director role. So if we look at the left-hand side of the screen, the box first for sites that might have an existing RSC transitioning into a resident wellness director. The way you want to frame the meet and greet is you're going to have something to say. You want to meet the new team. Both of you, whether it's a brand new team or an existing team, you want to have something to meet the team. And people say, well, I already know you. You've been here a long time. Well, they don't know the nurse. Hopefully you have that nurse. And you're going to say, we're going to have, create a new way. We're going to start talking about new and different things that are going to happen in this building and new ways we're going to think of it. So come in, people are always willing to come. And I don't know if your housing sites have budgets for food. Hopefully they have some. I know ours, some do and some don't. But if you have food or coffee or maybe just coffee and cookies at a minimum, then you'll get a lot of people there. But create a short dialogue or activity that opens up thinking in a new way. And I'm going to talk about some of what that means. And then if you're not brand new to the building, you can talk to the group about what excites you about the change from being an RSC to a resident wellness director. So not meeting you for the first time, but you can say why you're really excited about this change. And then share something your residents don't know about you. I bet there's something that they don't know about you, even if they've known you a really long time, because we want to start talking about what I'm going to call holistic introductions and more of a holistic perspective on getting to know people. And you can model this for them because you're going to be working on it with them as well, and so it's good for you to do the modeling first. And the last thing is, what do you do for self-care? And the self-care concept really comes out of some excellent health coaching training that trainers around that. And self-care for the professional and for individuals is so important. And I think that conversation is going to be great to come up with your residents over time as the model goes on. And you, again, can start by modeling this. So you can use this. You can use the word self-care. You can use a different term. But again, it's introducing thinking in a new way about health and wellness. Very similar if you're a brand new team, but you would start a little bit about just sharing your background and who you are because they haven't met either one of you before. And then again, what excites you about this position? So it's not a change, but why did you take this position? What is really exciting? And then you might want to share your favorite thing you've learned about the housing site or about the building, the community. Again, what do you do for self-care? And I have at the bottom, include your elevator speech. Include, you're going to start off with, what is IWISH? And this is really just going to be that high level. We're bringing this program, and I see the chats you sent in. All of those things are great. Start off with this. It's a new program. It's a demonstration, these descriptions about it are great. And you're going to start off very high level and then move into these sharing items and start that conversation. And after you've done some of this, you can then turn it to the folks in the room and say, we'd love to know from you as well and hear some things from you. So how about everyone shares, they can share about self-care, they can share about what excites them about the program. You start conversations about the healthcare system using language that feels good to you. What do they love about going to see their doctor? What are things they might like to see differently? You're throwing out broad and general topics, and you're just gathering information about the community in a broad sense. So, did I tell you at the beginning this is going to be really interactive? Joy might have mentioned it, but if you didn't get that already, it's going to be really interactive. So just quickly, I just throw in the group chat. Let's practice. What do you do for self-care? Let's take a minute, and Joy will probably read out a couple of them, and then we'll keep moving on. But what's something that you do for self-care to make sure none of you guys burn out? This is really important and really hard work that you're all doing. So everyone throw in there, what's something you do for self-care?
Oh, we have some great responses, Stephanie. We have dance and listen to music, personally one of my favorites. Zumba, walking, watching Hallmark movies, yes. Manicures and pedicures. I thought someone would say Lifetime. Exercising, camping, Netflix binge. We can be friends, Asher. Running on the mountain, cuddling with pets. Being positive, I love it. Massage therapy, going outside. We have some great responses.
That's awesome.
Give you all about 30 more seconds to type in some things. Pamela says, I take every other Friday off from the office to take care of me. Massage, mani-pedi, walking. I love that, Pamela. That is very important.
Wow.
As Stephanie said, we understand that this is going to be hard work, and so we want to make sure that you understand that self-care is also going to be important. Because if you take care of yourself, you'll be better able to take care of the residents. All right, back to you, Stephanie.
Great, thanks, Joy. And this is really, really fantastic. So thank you all. I love how many things there are about staying positive and taking care of yourself. So you all are well trained, and you really just want to model that, and feel free to be very real with your participants. And I was going to show you in the beginning, but the slide transitions don't always work well, but I have like a semi-professional picture that I can do in presentations when I present, but it's like, a static picture of me. And then there was another picture of myself with my family, and half the people's eyes are closed, but we're in the mountains in Vermont and being outdoors, and that's another way to say, this is who I am. I could talk about all the work I do and presentations and all of that stuff, but really it's more about, for me, it's getting time some fresh air, being outside and being with my family. And that also opens up conversations with people. And because once you do start doing these assessments and person-centered interviews, you're going to be asking them a lot of personal questions. So I think it is important in the beginning to be open to, sharing within reason. So as far as the logistics, starting next week, you all are welcome to start thinking about how you want to advertise these, setting up some times. Some of you may probably, if you've been in the buildings a while, already have regular events set up, so you may want to tag this on to a regular event, or you may want to set up something special. I leave that up to you because every site operates differently, so you're going to know your building the best. But go ahead and start planning these. The couple tips that I would give you is you definitely want to offer them at a few different times. Don't make them all in the afternoon or all in the morning or all on Wednesday. So really get to know your site, because as you guys know with older adults, some wake up early, some wake up late, and vary the day and the time. If you're able to, depending on what your community spaces are like, you may want to offer one in a large space and maybe a couple in small spaces, thinking about people's learning and comfort styles. And then I know a lot of you have multiple languages or different languages in your sites, so whatever typically works for you, whether it's having an interpreter with you during a presentation or offering it a couple times in different languages. So just to be sensitive to those cultural needs in your community. Okay, so we're going to move on from that section and look at explaining IWISH and engaging with what we call resident advisory groups. And this sounds formal, but we're going to leave it up to the flavor of the building. And this, we're really moving up the pyramid, and it's still foundational in the relationships, but it's really going to understanding your population. And that understanding of your population is going to grow and deepen throughout IWISH. It's again, this is not a checkbox. It's just going to be an essential part of the model all the way through. And everything we're doing up until that phase 4 is all pre-enrollment. It's everything you can do until they've signed that form that allows for sharing of personal information. So this whole thing is pre-enrollment. And it's just a continued time for building trust, learning about them. And one of the things I'm going to say a couple times is to seek out these naturally occurring gatherings and the rituals to listen in a new way to things going on. So some of these things like the meet and greets that you're going to host, these formal activities or other activities you may already have happening in your building will attract a lot of people or certain people, but in order to get a good comprehensive view of your population, you may have to seek out some of these gatherings that happen that attract different people or that attract different people. I was saying that I was visiting a building in Minnesota a couple months ago, and there's this nice small group of about 6 people that meets, I think, every morning at 7 a.m., and they play cards and tell jokes and drink coffee. And I don't know that they go to the big gatherings because they don't like them as much, but they're there and they have a strong bond, and to join in with them and sit with them for a little bit and just chat about them and why do they meet in that room and why that time of day and what is it that interests them and what are their health needs and those kinds of things. So that's what I refer to as naturally occurring groups, and some of those could be 2 or 3 friends that meet, twice a week in someone's apartment to just really, get a view of the people in your building. So a resident advisory group is a way for you to get feedback on what's going on in the building, in the community, and also as you start to develop out the IWISH model in your community, you definitely don't want to do it in a vacuum. You want to be getting feedback from the people in your community. So, let's say within the first 3 to 6 months you launch certain activities, you offer a few things, especially if they're really new around the wellness side of things. You want to have a group of people that you can go to say, how's this working for you? What are you hearing? This time of day good? Do we need to make some adaptations? So really to get some ambassadors and advisors to bounce ideas off of. Now, you're definitely going to hear things in other ways as well, and you can do surveys. But I think making sure that you proactively have a structure in place to get feedback is really important, and that you make sure that you don't start designing things without feedback from the group. And you're kind of designing a feedback loop so you also have champions in the community. People really like the idea that they've been a part of developing this and giving feedback, and they'll kind of advocate and get other people. I'm going to refer back to a tool that Walter referenced, the WAIT, which is why am I talking? So I'm saying listen more than you talk when you're with them, and I think, again, a lot of you are pros at this, but definitely when you're spending time with people over the next couple of months, you really want to be listening and absorbing their thoughts about the community, which for some of you, I imagine who've been there a little while, you're fantastic at this, especially one-on-one, but maybe in groups, you're used to running the groups, providing activities, and maybe it could be new to go to some of these activities that happen without you where you're like, phew, that's one less thing I have to run, but maybe going to it and just joining in while they knit and sitting and listening to the conversation that kind of happens naturally during a knitting group or whatever it may be. And so who makes up a resident advisory group? There's nothing formal that mandates what it has to be because it's going to look different everywhere. So many housing sites have a resident council or some sort of formal group in the building made up of residents, and they vote on things, and they have a board or something like that. If there is one of those in your community, I definitely think you reach out to them proactively, ask about the best way to interact and how to get their opinion on new activities and programming and interaction with IWISH, because you want to be on good terms with those resident councils. They can often be powerful. And see, share about when their meetings are and find out if you can come in and, present or how you can help. And then you also think about, especially if you know the residents in your building already, think about which residents would make a nice representative group to be a small advisory group, maybe just 4 or 5 people to be those ambassadors and provide feedback. I think there are definitely people who often volunteer who are often fantastic, and then there's also people who volunteer because maybe they want to be involved in the gossip or something else. So think about it, and you definitely know the people who would be good, and maybe they meet with you once a month or less frequently, and just for an hour or half an hour, and you chat. So it doesn't have to be a big time commitment. And if both of you are brand new to a building, then maybe you want to just take a little bit more time to get to know the people in the building before you actually formalize some sort of a group. And I talked about this already, seeking out the naturally occurring gatherings and just kind of listening in and joining, and just talk to them, ask questions about what's going on, what do they want to see, talking about health and wellness, and what changes would they like to see, and things like that. So when you're with these groups, whether it's a big group, a small group, and you're just gathering information in different ways, what are some of the questions that you're going to want to ask them? And so you're really asking about what are the strengths in the community and within healthcare and wellness, and what are some of their desires? What would they like to see differently? And so here's just some prompting questions for you to think about, and you can add more. And so what are your favorite things about living here? What activities do you enjoy taking part in? Who do you go to for support when you have a question or a need? And this is going to start to give you ideas of who has a strong support network and who doesn't. Those are some clues to isolation and other health concerns, actually. You can ask them, how do they define independence? I'm going to talk more about this later, but it's a really great question to ask older adults. And for desires, if you could have any activity here, what would it be? Now, you're not going to say you're going to offer that. You just say, we're just thinking pie in the sky. So what types of health education and support are you interested in seeing provided in the building? What kinds of things do you hear from your doctors that you wish you could have more support with? And you could ask this in a different way, is you want to know, what is it about the healthcare system that they like? What don't they like? What could be different? And when you ask these questions, you may hear things like, I wish my apartment had a dishwasher. Can you get us dishwashers? And you can't, my guess is. And so that's okay. And you're listening. You can say, wow, that's really good to hear. I'm not sure that I can do anything, but, I appreciate you sharing with me. So just know, sometimes when you ask these big open-ended questions, you could get answers that you can't, information, and they may ask if you can do anything. It's okay to say there's certain things you can't do anything about. But for the most part, you say, I'm gathering information, and let them know you're not asking because you're definitely going to be able to do anything. What questions not to ask? So at this point in the implementation, you definitely don't want to be asking them specifically about health conditions or anything like that. It is likely that someone may just decide to throw out there that I have diabetes and I can't keep it under control, and can you help me with that? And if someone chooses to share in a group setting about their personal health, that's not a HIPAA violation, that's their choice. I would just kind of avoid going down a road there. And you can say, I'm sorry to hear you're struggling with that, and maybe in the future, when the IWISH enrollment starts, the nurse, that would be a great thing to talk about with the nurse. But try and just kind of steer clear of those things, and because those are questions you can help with once the official enrollment starts, and you're not going to say, how high is your blood pressure? That's something, again, that you would be doing in a private setting, one-on-one, with enrollment, things like that. Now, again, if you are doing a vital sign clinic where you're taking down their vital signs for them, like if a nurse is running a blood pressure clinic, writing down their blood pressure, handing it to them on a piece of paper that they can leave with. If you're private and alone, they may talk about their blood pressure, but you're not documenting and keeping any of that. And that's really happening in that kind of third phase right before the official enrollment launch. Would you like me to call your doctor for you? You're not going to ask that, not until you have permission and signed documentation. And you all know this, why don't you come to the monthly birthday gatherings anymore? You don't, no judgment in any of this. You're really just gathering, you're listening, taking in information. So again, using all those skills that you learned on Tuesday. A lot of you have those skills, but I have been trained for several years in motivational interviewing, and I find that I can't practice enough because I mess up all the time and I'm always learning new skills. So this is a great opportunity to really practice. Oh, that's my next slide. To practice all of the motivational interviewing techniques that you're learning, and just keep practicing them all the time. The more you use them, the more natural they're going to feel. And as I said earlier, using them when you're just really talking about casual things is great, great practice for when you do want to use these skills, when you're coming down to the fact that, you do an assessment with someone and they smoke, they have high blood pressure, they have diabetes, and they don't exercise at all, and you say, is there any of these things that you might want to change, or which of these looks appealing to you? And, I still really have to stop and think about how do I want to phrase those questions. I'm going to call Walter before I talk to my next participant. So as much as you can practice is always good. So I'm just curious, if you were out with a group of your residents, what is another strength or desire question you could ask when you're meeting with groups of people and you're just gathering information face in the community?
So remember, as you're typing into the chat, to please select all attendees, all participants. And so, yeah, share your thoughts. Share what is another strength or desire question you can ask residents.
Oh, I like that.
We got some. Judith says, what kind of magazines or books should we put in the library? That is a good question.
Mm-hmm.
What part of living here do you think is most important to you? That's a really good one. How do you cope with stress?
Good. Yeah, and I think, bucket list. Oh, I love that.
Do you have a bucket list of things you would like to achieve? What activity would you like to take part in? These are some really good questions. Keep typing them in. We are reading and we will be responding. I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Yeah. And you guys, you'll spark each other's ideas, and that's why I am asking you a lot of questions in this presentation, is you're just going to learn from each other. And these are some things, too, in your regional groups or your liaison groups. You can really do some brainstorming together. So prior to formal engagement, we want to talk about empowering residents, and really this is, you can now, starting next week, also start thinking about activities and programming. So you might be already doing some, but or you're not, and what are some new and different things that you could be doing. So feel free to go ahead and start doing some programming after the meet and greet. So empowering the individual is going to happen continuously throughout IWISH. And so think of this as the very first level through your activities and programming. You can start doing some programming, and then this empowerment through programming and healthy aging plans and all of the parts of the model will continue. So this is the way to create some new excitement around that. So here are some options of ways to engage with people in the pre-enrollment phase. The regular communication, just in person, just hang out with people. I think before you get incredibly busy with all of your person-centered interviews, healthy aging plans, wellness assessments, right now is when you have time to just be with people and go to all the activities and spend time with them. So take advantage of that. It's a great time to start doing a monthly newsletter if you don't already have one. If you do have one, make sure you're adding in some health and wellness features to it. Start a wellness nurse corner with articles around things that are relevant to the season or wellness tips. You can start some conversational groups or activities that talk about things like the myth of independence. We're going to talk about that. Some conversations around positive aging. There are just some easy conversation topics you can bring up to people. You can say to people, what do you think of? What words come to mind when you think of aging? And they'll throw words out there. And typically what generally happens, they throw up really negative words, pain and old and frail. And then you can talk about what about these other words and reframe it for them. Use positive terms and see their reaction to that. Nurses can start doing things like nutrition talks, education on reading food labels. It's flu season. If you don't already have it, can you bring in a pharmacy or a home health or other organization to offer an on-site flu clinic that takes Medicare or however it works? Self-care workshops. So start doing a lot of these things to really build some excitement and see things happening. And I want all the nurses or any of you to know that when you hear like an activity or presentation, that doesn't mean there needs to be 30 people at it. A presentation can be 4 people sitting around a table with a nurse, and that is going to appeal to some of your residents. And then it can also be 30 people in a larger group presentation, and it can be technology or no technology. So you can do this in a way that really works for the people in your building. Do as much as you can as a team, because you're still working on that strong team building right now and getting to know the community together, so that's really going to be great. Again, while you're not as busy with all those assessments. So we talked about this. You can create new activities if you've already been doing some, or sometimes what you want to do is insert some of those guided conversation topics like the positive aging into gatherings that already happen. We definitely had a couple sites in Vermont that were very resistant to anything that was quote-unquote education. They're like, we don't want any education. So what one of our care coordinators did is she just kind of slipped in some casual conversation that was actually from an educational workshop into their already happening gatherings that were like coffee and game day. So they were playing games, and then she just started a conversation about aging. And they loved it, and they totally engaged in the conversation. They just didn't want to go to anything that was formally called education. So, and by introducing some of the topics on the previous slide, you're really creating this new buzz of conversation, shifting their thinking, and just creating some new excitement about things that are going to come. Because maybe they've never thought about asking their doctor questions about, do they really need a procedure, or how much does it cost, or questions they want to ask their doctor that they didn't know they could. So here I alluded to kind of the myths of independence. This is a great conversation for people. This comes from Bill Thomas, who's the inventor of the greenhouse model. And people talk about that I'm independent, I don't need any help. And the myth is that being independent means relying as little as possible on other people. That's what it means to be independent. Well, I don't know about all of you, but I consider myself independent, but I rely a lot on other people in my life. So when the reality is that being independent means being able to define the manner in which one cooperates with others. And that's something that's really nice to talk about, is that being independent is really just having the choice to talk about how do you cooperate with other people, how do you interact with them. But it doesn't mean being completely alone and never getting help from someone or helping others. So this can be a really nice conversation. And then this is the myth of dependence. The myth is to be dependent is to be compelled to rely on others for the most basic necessities of life. And this feeds into what I said earlier, where the reality is to be dependent is to be human. We all rely on others for the necessities of life. the form this reliance takes adds to or detracts from our well-being. So again, we're talking about choice, which plays right into motivational interviewing. We're playing into commonalities of being human. You know, how is it that I seek help from others or that I ask for assistance? And I definitely need people to take care of my animals when I travel or get my kids to a certain place. And that doesn't mean that I'm not independent or that I am a dependent person or that dependence is great, you know, helpful. This is an example of another activity you could do. This comes from the International Nurse Coach Association and Health Coaching. It's a scavenger hunt around self-care, and it's really just fun. You could do it with staff. You can do it with your residents, though, and it'll get them thinking in a new way. So I think that's the idea, is really shift their thinking. I'm going to skip this because of time, but if people, we're not going to pause to read them, but if you guys want to chat this in while I keep going, I'm just curious about a new activity that you're excited about introducing. So you can chat it in, and I'm going to keep going just because of time. So to put this all together, you've really got these phases you're going to go through. So just remember, you know, building these relationships is your foundation. Take the time to get to know the people. That will go so far over the time that we have up until then. So what you want to be doing right now, starting next week until we all get together in November, is practice and polish that elevator speech, get to a point where you feel comfortable with it. You can plan your meet and greets and start having them. Put together a flyer, let people know. Work on those holistic introductions, make sure that they're personable and have the same come from your residents. You want to seek out and kind of form what are going to be your resident advisory groups, and if you're both brand new to a building, just be kind of thinking about who the residents are and that you might want to seek out for that. And then you can start planning and actually doing some activities during this pre-enrollment phase all the way up until that final launch. So these are the things that you can go ahead and start doing.